Good morning and afternoon.
Hello.
Good morning. Hey, John, nice to meet you. My name is Cody.
Hey, Cody, how are you?
Doing well.
Awesome.
I see you, John.
Good to see you as well.
I saw those responses come through. Those are awesome. Appreciate that.
Okay, no worries.
I think we'll kind of keep it pretty conversational for the most part. Probably get started probably around like the 1:03, 1:05 time frame. Where are you based out of, John?
Boston.
Oh, cool. Me too.
Excellent. What part of Boston are you in?
South Boston for the time being.
More towards the Cape.
Nice. In like the Hingham / Hull area.
No, Lakeville.
Okay, nice. I was planning on going down there later this afternoon, and I'm glad those plans fell through. I didn't really want to sit through Cape traffic for the most part, so it's always fun.
Oh yeah.
All right, got some people joining. Give it a few more minutes, and then we'll get going. And I'm assuming we probably won't take the full hour, so we'll probably get out of here. It's somewhere between 1:30 and 1:45 is my guess. How's it going, Scott? Tim?
Life is good. How are you, Cody?
Doing well. It's Friday, can't complain.
Sorry about your Celtics, but looks like Denver's gonna get revenge for you.
Yeah, it's nice that Caleb Martin, Max Strus, and Duncan Robinson decided to turn back into pumpkins for the finals. That was fun to watch last night.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah, that hurt. I will say that very much hurt. Wish they could have at least made it a game, but there's always next year. So
I would have liked a rematch between the Warriors and Celtics.
me too. But I'm happy for Denver. They're like just a feel-good story. So all right. We got more people jumping on. We'll get started in the next minute or so. But just before we get started, just from housekeeping items for everybody that has joined so far. This is going to be kind of like an interview style, Q&A style type of event today. We have John Lenz, who's the SVP of Americas at Alteryx, joining us, who's going to give us a ton of knowledge into how to build a revenue generating machine. But we definitely have a list of questions that we've sourced from people who have been registering. But if you have any questions that come up just based on anything, that John talks about or that you're interested in, please feel free to drop that in the chat. We definitely want to make this as interactive as possible. And if you're open to it, we'll very much give you the mic and let you come off mute to ask your questions yourself, or we can take care of that stuff in the chat as well. But yeah, I think we probably can get started. So thank you, everybody, for joining today. We know a few more people are going to jump on, but my name is Cody Bernard. I'm the head of marketing at Close Factor. And with me today, we have John Lenz, like I mentioned just a bit ago, who's the SVP of Americas at Alteryx, who is here to talk all about how to build a revenue generating machine. John has decades of experience doing this with an incredible track record, and we're just super excited that he is open to talking about this today with everybody on this call. So John, do you want to take a minute to introduce yourself?
Well, thank you. Yeah, John Lenz, hopefully you can hear me okay. Senior Vice President of the Americas at Alteryx. Been with Alteryx for 2.5+ years, but part of that I was an executive at VMware for 17 years, ran the Americas, and was responsible for roughly $3 billion worth of annual revenue. But appreciate your time and allowing me to speak today.
Awesome. Glad to have you. Yeah, so just before we get into everything, I just mentioned too, if you have any questions that come up, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll make sure to get to those. But just from what I've heard and just our conversations with you, John, and that you've had with our team here at Close Factor about, building sales teams and building high-performing sales teams, it kind of seems that we've kind of distilled it down to like 3 major categories. A lot of that is, about tools or tactics or methodologies. So I think today I would love to kind of dive into those categories itself. And I think just get a good understanding from you, a person who is in the driver's seat, building these teams and what it actually takes to do that. So yeah, I think we can jump right into it. And I think probably the most probably the best topic to talk about right now is just the fact that with today's climate and everything that's going on in the 2022, 2023, we've seen a lot of tech consolidation. A lot of people are evaluating their tech stacks. And I think this is just something that's really fascinating. And I would love to kind of get your sense on, from an ideal perspective, the ideal tech stack for a sales team. What are the tools, solutions or categories that you see as a must-have for your team?
Yeah, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's one that self-automation tools are probably the most critical part of the ideal technology stack. And the reason why that is because I need to make sure my entire sales organization is fully empowered to drive pipeline activities without asking for assistance from somebody in, say, like sales operations. And if they do, it just causes time delays and sales cycles to be lost. So it's all about the economies of scale, and trying to make sure that we are looking to drive significant revenue growth and leverage a platform that we know that can provide that self-service. And from a technology requirement, that to me means I do not require hundreds of different technologies, but certainly just a handful that can be rinsed and repeated. It can be automated, and teams feel comfortable to using them, day in and day out. And by doing that, that will create a lot of speed and efficiency, increasing pipeline. It will allow tools or solutions that can be quickly qualified or quantified to drive greater pipeline, which at the end of the day is the most important thing that we have going forward. And it has to be something that provides an ability to just scale and run fast. Now, there are other important solutions that we require from value engineering tools that show the art of the possible and what we can do with proposals or ROI savings. We're looking at how our SE team and technical teams can help monitor the progress of point of technical validations and sales. And then we also, being an analytic company, one of the biggest things that I've learned coming to Alteryx is that data analytics, can certainly drive a better understanding around, who we should be talking to, who is the right customer we should be targeting to, and how we can use pipeline past performance measurements as a way to improve future performance and measurements. And then it wouldn't be a conversation today without saying, Chat GPT is certainly going to be an interesting factor around how that can be used to help, create qualified emails, get greater, faster responses and stuff of that nature once you've identified that target audience.
So with the tech stack, do you kind of think about it as like bringing in tools for a specific point in time within your sales process? Like you have tools that'll help you prospect, you have tools that'll help you close, you have tools that'll help you work opportunities. Is that kind of like the mindset that you have, or is it more along the lines of, hey, we have a particular problem, right? Like our connect rates might not be high with prospects, or hey, we have a lot of friction when it comes to engaging people when sending over proposals. what does kind of that look like for you? Or what's your mindset when you think about like categorizing the tools that you do bring in for your team?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly will categorize tools based upon, say, pre-sales and post-sales. From a pre-sales perspective, there's, tools that we will look at like Close Factor that will help us identify who the right prospect is faster than a person on my team that is, scrolling through LinkedIn or just doing their own research over time. Like, it's all about, again, speed and efficiency around, my team having just enough information to make qualified decisions around how they can go after, a prospect. And once they identify who that prospect is, are there materials or tools that allow them to talk to that prospect more effectively and efficiently so that, you get a better response rate than your peers or your competition or somebody else that's trying to reach the same CIO or chief data analytics officer or, CISO, because these people are, getting 10, 20 emails a day. I know certainly in my role as SVP of Sales, I get the same amount of emails from companies trying to target me for tools and solutions that they think they will help me be better in my performance around me increasing my productivity in my pipeline. So, we got to be very smart around, how we interact with our customers. What are the tools and solutions that allow us to find better prospects? And then once we find these prospects, what are the ways that we can communicate to these prospects faster and more efficiently so that they want to take that meeting? And then once you have that meeting, how are you going to use tools and solutions that you can follow the life cycle of that selling motion that allows you to eventually close it? And then once you do close it, it's how do you do that rinse and repeat? How do you then go use this as a way to do further analysis or selling motions with that individual to go maybe deeper and wider within the account? So, software is a very important part of it. It's how you management, how you track your timelines, how do you put triggers to provide response rates? How do you know that your marketing materials that you're sending to customers is the right marketing materials that get the right response? I mean, you can't underestimate the importance of software in your day-to-day life to help improve your sales and your productivity. At the end of the day, create better revenue bookings growth.
Yeah, and I think that's making sure that your team has like the right tools, I think is incredibly important because there's a lot of waste out there. And I think like, over the last like 5 years or so, at least in my experience, you've seen a lot of like, bring your own technology into the organization. And I'm assuming that, is shifting away from that type of ideology. And you need to make sure, that everything comes through kind of has the, the stamp of approval, specifically from you and your role in the revenue operations team. But that's actually a good segue into the next question. It was more about what is your role in the evaluation process of, technology that you're looking to bring in? Is it something that you typically lead? Do you lean on other people within your team, like revenue operations, or maybe even the account executives themselves? What does that look like for you?
It is definitely a team sport. I can tell you that. My role is definitely an important one. If operations, who owns the technology stack for software standards for sales, they may not be the ones that officially bless the technology because IT, my CIO, will make sure it doesn't do anything crazy or create security risk within the company and all that kind of good stuff. But, no doubt my sales operations teams, they're the ones that are responsible for managing, the business relationships. They're the ones that are responsible for making sure it has the right ROI, has the right use that drives better pipeline, better sales. But they do not bring anything in-house unless me and or my team, are clearly part of the sales cycle or motion. And we will help them determine, if there's a value, or we will help or make sure that if there's a request or we see gaps in solutions, we'll certainly identify it, or we'll participate in POCs or have my teams participate, and then we'll look at, what is the success criteria? What is the value? Was there a greater return on investment? Does it scale across my SDRs, to my inside sales, to my field sales, to my global sales, to the renewal sales? can the solution scale internationally? There's just a lot that if we're going to make an investment, that it can really benefit the entire organization and not just 2 or 3 people, within the organization. So it's an important part. And then we'll get into certainly more how we roll it out and what's the importance there.
Yeah, I think this is a little bit off topic, but how do you think with kind of like the PLG? Sorry, I think
you had a little bit of an echo. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, so with like the PLG movement over the last few years, how do you think that plays into all of this, where you might have reps that go to, a website, sign up for a product, start to use that? Is that now considered a no-no, or something that you're kind of pushing your team to not do? Or does that not really play a factor, just given that typically you might be more involved in evaluation with like a traditional like enterprise or a sales-led motion?
I mean, we don't stop, at least I don't think we don't stop. We don't stop individual contributors that may have their potential own uniqueness around how they want to look at a technology or may download of something. Like my IT build is not completely locked. So if I wanted to download some software, I can certainly, I think, attempt to do it, but it is certainly frowned upon. And if my operations teams find out that there's mass amount of that, I don't think they would be too kind to it. But what I will say is, like, we have a standard set of 5 or 6 tools, and when we roll out forecasting, or when we look at pipeline development, when we look at activities that they're using to build proposals or build out marketing materials that help create a presentation, those are standardized software solutions that is rinse and repeated. So if somebody goes off the beaten path, it's going to be hard for that person to be successful here within Alteryx. And that was the case even at VMware when I was there. They wouldn't even allow you to have any software other than what the build was completely locked. Your desktop was completely locked.
Yep. You touched on this a little bit, but would love just kind of like a quick explanation. When you bring on a new tool within your sales organization, what does that rollout look like? Is it something that you do, with a few high performing reps to start, and then you figure out, okay, yes, this works, let's scale? Or is it something that if you can see enough value in the tool during the sales process, you have no problem rolling it out to a broader group of individuals?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly will have some guinea pigs. They're always good to, work out the kinks, or say, this will work for them or not. The high performer people that are open-minded. Yeah, I mean, we definitely do that, but it's also one that we don't want to wait too long to roll it out, because time just kills opportunities in pipeline development. So we're pretty fast to act on just making sure that we have a proper rollout and training that is officially managed through our training organization, and that is managed by a separate team that rolls into sales, and they're responsible for communicating and putting calendar invites and doing rinse and repeat sessions, recording sessions, and just make sure everybody has the broad stroke of training. And then unfortunately, because people don't maybe have the right mental mindset one day, or the dog may have ate their homework and wasn't in the office that day, or whatever, on vacation, like, you have to then repeat the content, re-educate the teams. And then as you see some teams really not maybe grasp or have the right pipeline development, or whatever the case may be, we are constantly bringing people back into reinforcement training. So one thing that we do really well, if somebody's not performing to the level standards that they should be, we will put them back into another boot camp of training and enablement for a week. We will fly them to California, and we will re-educate them on best practices, say around how to use Salesforce, or other tools or solutions that can really just make sure that they're properly more capable of trying to help them grow their business.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. You've always kind of like gotten to a point, at least, what I've seen in the companies that I've worked at, sales organizations where you have people who aren't necessarily either performing, or maybe there's like a little bit of a blip throughout the year, whereas they're kind of tossed to the side. There's really like the lack of reinvestment into the sales individual. So I really actually appreciate that. That sounds like a really awesome thing, because sometimes you just need to get back to the basics, right? Like you fall off the bike, you just need to get back on. So I appreciate that approach. What are the non-negotiables when it comes to bringing in new technology? Like what are kind of those absolute must-haves that just are like something that would be a blocker for you?
Yeah, the first thing is there's a dry pipeline. And I said it before, does it scale across my organization? Is it simple to use? If I have to have somebody click through, 6 different screens and put in a whole different set of fields to then roll something out or get an answer or anything of that nature, like, doesn't help me out. Does this technology go across my organization? As I mentioned, like, does that go through SDRs, inside sales, field sellers, everything? Like, can they all use it, including channel and marketing? Is it the same interface? So if I log in, can I see, who's using the platform? Can I see how much or how often they use the platform? Can I see who has the best success of the platform? The scale on just that is important. And can you prove out the results? Can you see tangible results of pipelines being created based upon this platform, and you have greater contacts, and at the end of the day, has your productivity per quarter or per year been greater to meet your company standards based upon what you brought in?
Yep. No, I think that has pretty much been like the only thing that I've seen too, is the fact that like, if you're not able to kind of move the needle in some of our core North Star metrics, which a lot of the time, right, is revenue, or it could be pipeline in this case, it's a non-starter. So I think just making sure that you're aligned, even when you're having your team, right, like reach out to the people that they're selling to, making sure that they are in tune with what that North Star metric is. So obviously for you, being revenue and pipeline, your buyers might be something completely different. So having a full understanding of that is key. So we talked a lot about tools, and I think that's super important, because equipping your team, making sure that they're actually able to perform their activities, to be able to deliver and hit their goals, I think is incredibly important. But let's kind of shift gears a little bit and move towards just when it comes to building that high performing sales team and driving growth. Like, what does efficient growth or effective growth mean to you? And what do you look for in your team when kind of that's the number one goal?
Well, every company has certain guidelines that they're accountable for based upon their executive leaders team or the board, the financial investors. Like, it's a set number that, I'm held accountable for. And, and to me, it's expected to have a certain standard of year-over-year growth that I have to hit. And if I don't, there's questions why. This could mean, at a top line level that, I have certain expectations of growth for me personally, but then on my team, my leader in Canada has a different set of top line or efficient growth that I'm asking that leader. LATAM may have another different set of growth, because there could be economic changes, there could be government changes within certain countries that are causing revenue to slow down. I know here we have different revenue growth that is separate from EMEA and APJ. They're emerging markets here, so they're certainly separate there. But so you have to really break it down per segment at the end of the day to make it more achievable and more realistic. But you aggregate all that together and you have my top line. But the interesting thing is, as I talk to my sales teams and we look at booking targets that we could set or growth targets that we could set per quarter, per half, it's interesting in how sales teams could have an argument for, my bookings growth is set too high, or, I feel great about my own bookings growth, and they try to try to figure out how to not game the system, but complain or argue that, they shouldn't have had as high of a growth target as, what we may have targeted to them. And I always equate to that, if a sales team or region did really well one quarter, and in the following quarter, I gave them that same revenue growth expectations, it may not be fair to them because they may have had an anomaly that caused a great quarter the quarter before, and now they're paying the penalty because I'm now giving them the same percentage of growth based upon a one-time event. And on the flip side, I could have a region that did really, really, really bad one quarter, and I could give them a lower growth target on it, and I could be rewarding them because they did really bad. So now I'm saying, all right, we're going to protect you. We're going to give you not as much growth the following quarter, and it has the opposite effect. So at the end of the day, the whole year will eventually blend itself out. But if I know for me personally, we have to achieve efficient growth, and that's based upon what our executive team and what my leadership team provides me or tells me what I'm going to do, and whether I like it or not, we got to figure out a way to get to it.
And that seems to be kind of like the hot topic for this year in particular is efficient growth. And even going back into last year, how has, from what you've seen in your experience, just all of the events that you've, personally worked through, right? Like everything 15 years ago and everything over the last 4 or 5 years, how has that changed the way you operate or changed the way you think about building a team and executing towards your revenue goals that you have in front of you?
Yeah. This year, the last probably full year, so half of last year to this year, talking to my peers in other software tech companies, there's no doubt everybody is feeling, a different sense of change around how customers are buying technology. And it's one that I think we have not really faced in a long time. Even in COVID times, things slowed down a little bit, but not to a point where companies were just really financially stopping their spend based upon their need to solve some business problem. Organizations now are really being held accountable for profitability and higher expectations on revenue growth. And so with that, you see organizations really be tight on future spending. They're really tight on the economic return of the investment that is bringing in. They are very focused on improving operational efficiencies with any software. And if your software can prove that you could save individuals time, that means you're not having to go out and hire 5 more people or 10 more people to do a particular task or grow the business. You can make your team more efficient in their own job responsibilities, and that will equate to hiring X amount of more people. So it is different, no doubt, this year than the years past, including 2008 was more, I think, of a short-term financial bubble. But I know for my team, if we're going in on any size proposal, and I don't really care if it's $25,000 deal or $1 million deal, you have to show the value of what that proposal is going to do for that organization, because you will have somebody in finance overstep and say, are you really spending the right $50,000, or could we spend that money elsewhere? And if they don't prove it, chances are that spend does not get validated and approved, and purchase order gets kicked out.
Yeah, I think probably one of the biggest things that gets impacted throughout this entire process is goal setting in general. Like You talked a little bit about that during, the last question that I asked you previous to the one about learnings from, past experiences, but what does that look like at the start of the year? And then how do you think about adjusting or course correcting based on things that are taking place on your team? Like you mentioned, just because we had a great quarter in, Q2 or Q3 doesn't mean we should expect that same, growth rate. So I've seen a lot of adjustments take place this year, just talking to peers on the marketing side of the house, right? Like with, leads and pipeline and revenue goals. But what does that look like for you when it comes to setting goals and then either adjusting or course correcting when you see things that come up that are potentially out of your control?
I'll state that the thing that Alteryx learned or had a inkling on last year was that we just didn't have a good pulse on how the economy was going to play itself out into 2023. So the company and our finance team, sales, my leadership, decided to move into more of a 6-month half numbers from a goals perspective. In the years in the past was always year-based goals. And when you have year-based goals, typically, they will not change them. Very, very hard to financially change goals for the company. But luckily, we have the insight to determine, is it the right thing to do to put a half-year number, evaluate how the economy and how business is, and then as things materialize, we can figure out, do we move up or move down or keep things consistent from what we thought we were going to be for the beginning of the year. And you see a lot of companies actually do that. It's a right thing to do. It also helps with the morale of the employees, and they know they can re-level set and have another shot at financially having a better year, and not wait a full year to do another level set and have valuable time lost. So that's how we solved it here internally, and I think it was the right decision.
Do you think that practice is something that's going to be here to stay, moving to
Yes.
more of a 6-month forecasting model, or I guess goal setting model?
Yeah, I mean, it's really prevalent. You'd be surprised. It is definitely prevalent out there in the industry, and the way the organizations do it is they actually set the year goal. They get it through the board if there's a board, or leadership team. So they'll set the year number, but they only will communicate 6 months of it out. And that way, people don't game the system and all that kind of good stuff. But and then based upon, again, how we hit our goals, or if the company blew out their goals, then they could reset and provide a higher baseline for the second half of the year. But if companies don't hit where they thought they were going to achieve their goals, they'll reset the targets down to make it potentially more realistic, or they'll hold it. But it's in this day and age, you have to. It's just the economy and the world that we live in is unpredictable. Nobody can tell you what the next 6 to 12 months is going to be, unfortunately.
Yep. No, I think I do like that model too, because I think was just so much uncertainty just in general. Like it's nice to be able to kind of take a step back, look at, what went well, what didn't, course correct. And I think even times where that happens, you're able to set yourself up for the future in a better way than you would be if you were doing annual planning, because you might not necessarily take, the same actions or, any different paths or avenues that might present themselves based on that. But so we've talked a lot about, tools and technology and tactics around driving growth. And I think I want to talk about one more kind of category or topic before we let you go. And that's probably the most important piece of all of this, which is around people and selling and best practices. So I guess let's start it off with, what do you look for in a salesperson or a sales leader that you're looking to bring onto your team? And what does that interview process look like?
I mean, it's a great question. And first and foremost, I always look for, does this person show the drive for success? Are they motivated? Do they look hungry? Do they have a proven track record? because you just cannot teach the need or the will to succeed and the motivation that an individual has. That in sales is probably the biggest thing that makes a person be from an A-type sales seller from an average person. But also important, is the integrity, of course. Does this person show humility and just, are they just an overall good person? And do they have the proven track record, of course, with references that goes behind it? The other thing I don't necessarily like or will hire on is if the person shows that they have an ability to not be able to handle diversity, or do they have a record that shows multiple stops, 1-2 year sales employments, and continuing just being jumpy all over the place. That I will not hire. I've learned that pretty hard.
What, for the people that you actually do, bring on that you are happy with when it comes to like who they are as a person, like what are the types of like interview questions that you kind of dig deep into around their experience or their, how they work and things like that?
I always ask, like, tell me a little bit about yourself. I actually will say I don't need a thesis. I don't need you to go back to the beginning of time when you were just out of college, or when you were still in high school. Like, and you'll be amazed how many times people will not listen to that and just go back to the first time they ever got a job. And to me, that just means they're not listening. And if they're not listening to me on an interview, which they should be violently paying attention, you kind of wonder, like, what are they going to do if they're just talking to to another customer or on the phone? So if they like to hear themselves talk and just continue to ramble, it's never a good thing. I will ask them a lot of questions, but I'll ask them, allow them to ask me questions back. And if they're not really intuitive on the questions, or show like they really did their homework, like that's a big non-starter to me too as well. But the big thing is, for me, is just, did they, at the end of the day, did they ask the right questions? And then did they, ask if there's anything that would have stopped me from hiring them, or what is next steps? Like, do they show that they really want the role? Because if somebody's in sales and they're trying to go for an interviewing process and get a job, and they're not asking for the job at the end of the day, then I won't hire that person. So they could have the best conversation all day long, but if they didn't ask for the job, I won't hire them.
Yeah, and I know I'm not in sales, but now I'm just kind of think back during this conversation, have I been rambling? And the answer is probably yes, a little bit. So hopefully that's not, too much of a turn off for the conversation that we're having today, but that makes sense.
And you're not in sales, but at the end of the day, wouldn't you want to know if the person enjoyed your time with you? Wouldn't you want to know if you have next steps? Wouldn't you want to know, if there's any other questions that you didn't answer that you should have answered, or do you just want to take everything for chance and just wait for somebody to pick up the phone and let you know the next day? Like, to me personally, it's you do yourself a favor by just asking the questions, and you'll know if you did well or not. They'll tell you, if they're an honest leader. I mean, they'll be fully transparent on that. I feel pretty confident in that.
Yeah, no, for sure. So when you think about, the people that you do bring onto your team and you're onboarding them, I'm assuming you mentioned, sales boot camp or some sales training that your team will go through, whether they're a new rep or somebody that might need some help along the way. What does, value-based selling and kind of implementing that type of like methodology or ideology into everything that they're doing, like, mean to you? Like, what do you look for, or how do you go and implement value-based selling specifically in your sales process with all your team?
I don't know how anybody can be successful today without value-based selling to begin with. Like, as I mentioned, like that has to happen. You can't do that, on a $25,000 deal, $50,000 deal. You have to talk about a business problem and why somebody should be spending money, and what the problem is that you're solving, and how it could create some form of return greater than what it would be without you buying the software? Does it solve a risk? Does it protect the company? Are you able to have much more efficiency gains with using our technology that, saves, that company hundreds of thousands of dollars? Like, does it stop a security risk where you can have, potential intrusion where, you have where you have an inside threat that causes a malware event? Like, there's things you need to do in proposals these days other than just put a product on a page with a quote line item that says, here's your price. And when I came to Alteryx 2.5 years or so ago, I must have asked 10 people for, what is their conversational talk track when they're talking to a CIO or somebody in business. I got 10 different presentations and they were all product presentations. There wasn't anything around the value in the business and the savings. It was just about feature, product. And you can't do that. And so we spent 6+ months working with our marketing team and coming up with the right strategy and the right positioning and how we can actually help a customer. We didn't talk about product. We talked about solutions. We never mentioned a product name in a position, in a presentation. So, to me, it's the best sellers talk about business outcomes and talk at what it's about for that person that you're presenting to or talking to. What is it in for that person? If you buy this solution, what does this do for you, CIO? What does it do for you, VP of Finance? Does this help your lives better? And I've seen it with a customer not too long ago where he brought in a technology and he was just a mid-level first-line director. And because he was able to show millions of dollars saved, he was promoted to Chief Data Analytic Officer of the company. And it's because, he took a chance and he showed the value of what it could do where nobody else in their organization was willing to take that chance. And it always has to be around value selling.
Now, is that something that you look to implement as, a skill for your team in regards to the talk tracks or the conversations that they're having with prospects? Or are there assets that you work on with your marketing team or maybe, sales leadership team to give them to help them along that journey of value-based selling? So I'm thinking, ROI calculators or, business case decks and things like that. Is that part of the arsenal that you arm your team with to help facilitate the value-based selling?
I mean, we talk about value selling every week. Every Monday, we have 3 proposals reviewed that's all about value selling. It's all about, what is the business problem? What is the reasons why an organization needs our technology? What are the reasons why, if they did not use our technology, what would be the problems that they would achieve? How are you using our technology to solve that problem? And then what are the reasons for them to move forward in the next steps? We do that every week, three 20-minute sessions. The entire leadership team gets on and we review 3 different customers. And it's reinforced every week for the last 26+ months I've been here. And it's amazing the culture shift that you're seeing where teams are becoming prepared and have just a different mindset and talk track that they were never having before. And I have people on my team from, 24, 25 years of age where they're starting off early in their career to people in their, they're in their 50s. And I would all classify them together that, some are doing it really well, some are not doing it really well, but when you bring them together, the water rises up with the tide and people are just automatically becoming better sellers, because they're able to have a much more confident conversation, with not only us internally, but with their customers.
Yeah, that's actually a perfect segue because I was just going to ask this last question for you before we let you go. When it comes to your high performers, do you see a correlation between, those that are very good at value selling, and even just outside of that, how do you leverage your high performers to kind of, like you mentioned, raise the tide for your team, even if it's just outside of value setting and just how they go about their work on a day-to-day basis?
I mean, it is a rinse and repeat exercise, and it's one that you can't just do once and think everything's going to be completed and you've done your job. We flew everybody to California in 2022 in January for a week worth of hands-on value training, 2.5 days of enablement. And even doing that, 3 months later, 4 months later, some people got it, some people embraced it, some people didn't. We had to redo all the education and training again. Now we have every week, there's a person on my team that has an open communications line, has a Teams line, and people just review proposals. Like it is, it is a muscle memory discussion, unfortunately.
Awesome. Well, John, thank you so much. This conversation was awesome. I know I learned a lot, and I know everybody that joined also learned a lot. But before we go, I just want to, open it up to anybody on the call that does have any questions. Feel free to either, drop them in the chat, or feel free to come off mute. Ask John directly yourselves. So with that, I'll kind of open the floor if anybody wants to take part.
John, this was amazing, and thank you for sharing all your best practices. One question from me is, what is on value selling? You mentioned a number of different things, like you take your top performers, you review the organizational value that you're delivering. What is the coaching you would give to people who are attempting to do it but not able to get there? Like what are typical mistakes you see, and how do you coach them out of it?
The biggest thing I see is that people are scared, believe it or not, of getting out of their comfort zone and asking the right questions and investing in themselves to be successful. Sales is not easy. I mean, as we all know, if sales was easy, everybody would do it, or nobody would make any money. But I equate sales as, being a lawyer, going to school. Constantly you have to relearn or re-educate yourself in your craft. I don't want to equate it to being a doctor, because doctors are special people and save people's lives, but they're constantly getting trained. Salespeople have to constantly get trained. You have to constantly reinforce best practices and learn from your peers, and grow and invest in your own self. And it's a big leap of faith, and the ones that do, the ones that are committed, the ones that will work at night and read up on materials or look at proposals or do the value selling to an account, those are the ones that will be much more successful than the ones that just work 8 to 5 and just go through the motions. You've really got to make the investment in it, and that's why I always say it's like hiring for somebody. You have to look, do they have the drive? And sometimes it's hard to see on an interview, but how they answer questions and how they talk about their business and their work ethic, and what's their what's their normal day look like. You can't teach a person like that. They either have it or they don't.
Good to know. Thank you. Thank you for that.
We do have one question that came through from Tim. So for a long time, I've always heard the term solution selling. Now we seem to be in the age of value selling. Can you quickly highlight the difference and your take on why there seems to have been a shift?
I mean, they're pretty close and similar. What I would say is, solution selling is basically, to me, just talking about no products, just what the technology does, and how does it solve a problem. But that's it. Marketing materials, when you present, if I presented my 10-minute elevator pitch, you won't see a product, and it's just about what my solution is and who we are and what the problem is. Value selling to me is around getting more deeper into the people that you're talking to. What's in it for them? What is their value? what is their problems that they're trying to solve? Asking questions as, if you're not able to solve this, what is the event that happens within your organization? That person may say, we may have to revert to our old ERP system, and it may cost the company $500,000. Like, that's value. Like, you're getting true understanding of the business impact, that if they don't do anything, there's consequences.
Awesome. Any other questions from anybody else before we let John go for the day? Cool. Well, thank you, John. We really appreciate it. Obviously, we're huge fans, and we know that your time is valuable, and we really, really thank you for jumping on the call with everybody today.
Anytime. Have a
Thank
great
you so
weekend,
much,
everybody.
John. You
Take care
too.
now. Take care.